and let us all do we can to build a better future.
In the aftermath of their epic failure, the squad, the Democrats, are now going to have to contend with the fact that the GOP, or most notably Representative Matt Gaetz, is able to implement power. And with him and 7 other Republican congressmen, they broke ranks to follow through with a promise that they made very clear that they were going to oust Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. They were not going to play games. Matt Gaetz wasn't screwing around, and he meant it. And this also shows, again, how forced to vote was a perfect strategy to use, to implement, to push back against, well, anyone that was going to stand against them. And forced to vote works. It does work. So corporate media is still trying to come to terms with it. But when you have a group of people who are dedicated, and this was not 15 or 20 or 30, this was 8 Republican lawmakers who broke ranks and sided with their political rivals, the Democrats, to oust out someone that they didn't like. And in turn, this has also caused a fight between the Republican establishment and the Democratic establishment. I want to give a huge shout out to Case Study QB. Please be sure to follow him on Twitter. He does phenomenal work. Let's pull up this video and hear how Morning Blow breaks it down.
And I know I probably upset some progressives yesterday by saying, maybe you think about protecting the institution and you keep the guy who's not going to deep six Ukraine funding and don't replace him with Jim Jordan. But we can't expect Hakeem Jeffries to come out and say, please vote for Kevin McCarthy. But if you are in the Problem Solvers Caucus, a caucus that is meant to protect the institution of the United States Congress, do you not, as a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, go, hey, guys, why don't we all just vote president on the Democratic side?
Right. No, the Democrats were not going to do that because the Democrats saw a chance to oust Kevin McCarthy. They didn't see the bigger picture. They were ready to jump on that because they didn't like Kevin McCarthy. They just didn't know what was going to cost them. It's kind of a clever tactic.
We'll keep McCarthy in there. We'll keep him on a short leash. We'll let him know that if and then suddenly you have a small group of people that have power. I will say there were about 12. You remember when I was there? Yeah. We had 12, 13, 14 people. Yeah. And we had a disproportionate amount of power, but we used it wisely.
No, you didn't use it wisely. Here, let's get a proper breakdown from System Update Glenn Greenwald.
One of the key distinctions that we have to understand is the difference between how the Republican Party functions and how the Democratic Party functions. Over and over, without very many exceptions, the Democratic Party votes unanimously, including on the war in Ukraine. It is amazing that all throughout the war in almost every country outside the U.S. and Western Europe, there is substantial left-wing opposition to the U.S. position on Ukraine. In Brazil, for example, the left-wing leader of Brazil, Lula da Silva, has long said he assigns equal blame to Russia and to NATO and Ukraine. That's the same view that the president of Mexico has, and that left-wing parties all over the world have, and yet there's not one member of the Democratic caucus, not one, that is willing to vote no and dissent from the war in Ukraine. It is a party that marches in lockstep to the point that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who was elected to Congress in 2018 on a pledge echoing Bernie Sanders' 2016 campaign to wage a war on the Democratic Party establishment, is now boasting about the fact that there's no dissent within the Republican Party. Just this weekend, she tweeted, quote, "The Democratic caucus has been operating like a well-oiled machine." And she's proud of that. That's not a critique. The Republican caucus has been operating like a Roomba stuck on an extension cord. So she is delighted about how little dissent there is within the Republican Party.
Upset at it. But let's talk about how the GOP is now wanting to take its revenge against the Democrats, all the while ignoring the fact that it was one of their own, Matt Gaetz, that pulled this off.
What do you think of this accusation that we've been hearing from a lot of Republicans in the Problem Solvers caucus, the Main Street caucus, that the Democrats really didn't do the institution any favors yesterday by, as they say, voting alongside Matt Gaetz?
Well, first of all, we didn't vote alongside Matt Gaetz. We took the question that was presented to us, and that is Kevin McCarthy
You did vote alongside with Matt Gaetz. You went along with him and his tactic of forcing a vote. He wanted something done, and he broke ranks with his own political party and used the Democrats' own hatred towards the GOP to try and score some points by removing Kevin McCarthy. They didn't see the bigger picture. So now Kevin McCarthy is no longer Speaker of the House, and the Democrats now have to deal with the ire of the Republicans. Yeah, probably Matt Gaetz is getting some shite from the GOP, but the Democrats that followed through with what he wanted them to do. The Democrats got played here by a forced to vote tactic.
McCarthy fit to be the speaker. And just based on his track record.
And like a well-oiled machine, the Democratic Party was more than happy to vroom, vroom along.
We came to a unanimous decision that no, he is not. And it's because he cannot be trusted to tell the truth. He can't be trusted. When he makes a commitment, he doesn't keep it. I go back to January 6th when he stood there and held.
January 6th. That is a day that will forever trigger all Democrats. They'll never get over it.
Donald Trump responsible, and 2 weeks later was in Mar-a-Lago on his knees to Donald Trump. I think about the debt ceiling negotiation where we came together in a bipartisan fashion, shook hands, made a deal. We lived up to our part of it. And within just a few days, Kevin McCarthy walked away from that deal that he struck with Democrats and with President Biden. And then I think about this most recent continuing resolution, and I think you pointed out in your conversation earlier with Mike Lawler. He went on the Sunday shows. The Democrats rescued Kevin McCarthy from the Kevin McCarthy shutdown, and then he fabricated facts to indicate that we were somehow responsible. I mean, this is just not a person whose word is any good. We know that the Republicans get a choice to pick their own speaker. But when they wrote those rules, they knew that Democrats were going to hold the speaker to a standard if that motion to vacate ever appeared on the floor. They knew that. Otherwise, they never would have argued about it.
Do you think that there's somebody? Go ahead.
I was going to say, if they expected that we always would have supported the Republican speaker, no matter what he does to us, or no matter how untrustworthy he is, they never would have had a debate about the motion to vacate because it would have been inert. They knew what they were doing, and they knew what the consequence would be.
Let me ask you.
But you got played. You got played, and here's why. This is an article from RT just to trigger the vote blue no matter who, people. MAGA power rocks the U.S. establishment. So as we mentioned before, former Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, just got ousted from his post as the third highest constitutional officer in Washington after a contingent of Republican lawmakers joined Democrats to remove him. Again, 8 Republican lawmakers broke ranks to join the Democrats. By breaking ranks, they are now able to freely choose somebody else that they want besides Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy inspired nothing but weakness. Kevin McCarthy couldn't do jack. And Matt Gaetz saw it, which is why it took 15 attempts last year in 2022. Or correction, last year, earlier into last of the 2022 up until 2023. It took 15 attempts for Kevin McCarthy to secure the speakership. And who was halting it? It was Kevin McCarthy and a group of Republican politicians in the Freedom Caucus that denied him that. What does that say? It tells you that if we were to wind back the clocks to 2021, AOC and those 14 other members of the Force to Vote petition, if they were able to unify and become a strong voting bloc, they too can get things that they wanted. They too can be seen as a true power establishment in the cesspool that is Washington, D.C. Now, I don't have to respect Matt Gaetz and his policy issues, but I will respect Matt Gaetz and his ability to use power and use Force to Vote to show that it can work. None of this would happen. And now we are witnessing back and forth fights between Republican and Democratic lawmakers. Matt Gaetz is probably sitting there eating some popcorn. He's probably getting some shite from his own political party, But what can they do to him? He has shown that he is able to stay one step ahead of all of them. And again, looking at this, while the details of the situation are, to be honest, pretty hilarious and indicate a lack of serious plan by those GOP members, it also reveals what's possible if elected representatives in America actually truly hold the establishment's feet to the fire. First, a word on what happened. In a nutshell, Florida Representative Matt Gaetz forced a vote. Oh my goodness, wait, what was that? Forced a vote. Let me read that again. Forced a vote on a motion to vacate the office of the speaker after threatening to do so last week because McCarthy apparently acquiesced to Democrats by passing a bipartisan temporary spending bill funding the government through November 17th and narrowly avoiding a government shutdown. Where it goes from there is not fully detailed yet, but some emerging reports from the right-wing press such as Fox News suggest that even the Republicans who joined Gaetz, first of all, weren't even sure of their own votes until the very moment they cast them. They also don't seem to have any sort of plan at all. Acting Speaker Patrick McHenry adjourned the House since pretty much the only thing he can do is form a session to specifically vote for a new speaker. This has never happened before, and the rules are vague. With the House adjourned, no congressional hearings can happen, subpoenas can't go through, and committees can't convene. This is telling because the same Republicans who ousted McCarthy are also leading an impeachment inquiry against President Joe Biden. Without a speaker, the impeachment process is halted. Well, that was more of Kevin McCarthy's attempt. I don't think Matt Gaetz cares about that. Maybe a little bit, but not that much. Given this, it was foolish for those lawmakers to vote out McCarthy, and that's especially the case when it took nearly 2 months of negotiations to install him in the first place back in January. Now there's no telling where things will go or how long it will take to cut deals and find a new speaker. If it takes even the same amount of time as before, then a government shutdown would be inevitable. The level of dysfunction from the GOP is not only poor governance, but also bad politics, since it would allow Democrats to look good by contrast. Not necessarily, but it's understandable. So at the same time, this situation demonstrates quite clearly that the establishment, especially during a period of intense partisan divide, is not truly safe. Even powerful figures such as McCarthy can be dethroned by a small contingent of representatives. That shows that people like Jimmy Dore, a well-known YouTube personality, are unfortunately correct for once. Hey, don't be that way. The comedian, Chicago's very own, called on progressives to refuse to vote for Nancy Pelosi as speaker when Democrats controlled the House until a vote was taken on Medicare for all. It turns out he was completely correct on that. Oh, we got somebody who agrees. Correct. Jimmy Dore was correct. We mentioned this before. If the Squad, a team of relatively young Democrat lawmakers who got into the House on a super progressive platform, had a backbone, as Gaetz and his gang of rebels have shown, they could have forced a vote on an important issue that many others. They certainly could have squeezed out concessions from Pelosi and the political establishment, making her understand that her position on the pedestal is contingent on the support of progressives and not the other way around. The fact that they, who are supposed to be more savvy and calculated than the MAGA mutineers, didn't do that indicates, the very least, a lack of commitment to the values that got them elected. Let's just remember that, folks. Jimmy Dore was correct on the issue. So many people can't come to terms with that. And Matt Gaetz was able to use that much to his advantage. So this power that we're seeing from people like Matt Gaetz, they're able to get things done. And the Squad is being called out for it. There's an infighting happening within the GOP, but there's also a fight with the Democrats. The speakership is empty. This is all one big move. This is what a forced to vote looks like. This is what it looks like when you want to take on the establishment. To be clear here, though, Matt Gaetz is a Republican lawmaker, so he has his own interests at heart as well. But at least he has the spine to get what he wants. And at least he's showing how it could work. And why all of us who ever supported the Squad have to be resentful and angry at the fact that none of them took this initiative. How many of them actually give a damn? How many of these so-called members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus care about us? They could have done something. They should have done something, and they chose not to. So somebody else took the tactic. Force to vote is available for anyone to use if they have the will to use it.